This is the drawing for the Fruit of the Spirit painting. And usually what I like to do is to start out with some kind of a drawing. So this is a pencil drawing. And the drawing in and of itself is pretty well worked out. It gives me some of the values and some of the concepts and ideas. How I want the dove to descend from above and coming down towards the cross. And so I'm using that element. And so in the next step, what I would do is I would put down earth tones and begin to rub out some of the lighter shades with the earth tones to establish some of my values. So you can see here where I've gone in with I actually went in with a rag and pulled out some of the tones and the forms in the browns. Makes it easier later. Here what I'm doing now is I'm laying down some of the basic colors, and the colors are just to kind of, I'm using local colors. I'm using ultramarine blue, probably a little bit of black and some white, and I can just apply those colors on the top of my base coat. So basically I'm working my painting from the foundation and moving it forward, and what it does, it gives the sky a lot of luminosity. It gives it depth, and you can actually see much of the underpainting, those earth tone underpainting showing through to the foreground. And you can see here I'm cutting in around the bird, and so I work around the bird to bring out the bird. So, and kind of working in a very loose manner. I'm not going for a lot of detail at this point. I'm just trying to kind of enjoying the process of painting. You know, really just getting into the painting, and I'm working at a pretty fast pace with laying the paint down and enjoying myself and enjoying the experience, because painting is part of the process, and you might as well, while you're painting, you might as well enjoy yourself. So here, that's what I'm doing here. And you can see now we're a little bit more where I can laying down some of the tones. So some of the areas that are a little bit lighter is where I put down less paint, and some of the areas that are a little bit darker, I've applied a lot more paint. So here you can see a little bit better. Go back in and lay down some more color. What I like to do is like put in the darks first, and I try to put the darks in a thin way so that they don't pop out, and then I apply the lighter tone over those darks, and that gives it depth to the surface and to the paint. So it really kind of like brings out the greens, and it kind of controls the atmosphere. So I'm laying those shapes down, and here you can see where I'm just kind of like moving through the painting. And again, like I said, you just kind of like want to enjoy yourself in the process of painting. So I put the cross down by working the negative shapes around the cross. And I thought about it. I said, well, I want the rays to come down to the cross, and then I want the water, symbolic of the book of Revelation, where it talks about Christ and talks about the water and talks about healing coming from that place. So that was one of my references that I use from the Bible to reference to this painting. And then I used the dove coming down as a symbol of the Holy Spirit coming down to the waters. So why I call this the Fruit of the Spirit painting. And you can see I'm continuing to work. And what I'm doing is, they call it scumbling. I'm not using a lot of paint, but just using enough paint to bring some color down. Because a lot of the work has been done, and it's been established already with the earth tones that were applied earlier. So I am working with a very limited palette. I'm using blues, some greens, yellows, yellow that I'm using is a Hansen yellow, so it's not an overpowering yellow like a cadmium yellow. So it keeps the greens toned down a bit. And then I'm using, so here's a sample of my palette. This is what I call like a low registered palette. I'm not using the cadmium yellow, I'm using the yellow ochre. I'm using, for red, I'm using burnt sienna, which is a reddish brown. I'm also continuing to use the ultramarine blue. And so what I did was I mixed the ultramarine blue with white and added some of the burnt sienna in there to give me a nice gray, because I needed some grays to work into the canvas in the sky area. But I find that the ultramarine blue is a very nice mixing blue when you're mixing color. So I usually use like 3 blues: cobalt, ultramarine, and cerulean blue. Studio right now, I'm getting ready to work on this painting that I started, and I promised that I would go through some of the processes that I deal with when I'm painting. So the first was the underpainting, and you can see some of the underpainting right in here, the browns, the earth tones, and then I went over with some of the local colors, like the blues and the areas of the top, blue and white. But a lot of the underpainting starts to show through, so that helps bring out the color and the depth of the sky. So that's one of the things that I try to achieve. I have the dove coming down from the sky, and it's loosely painted right now. I basically worked in the negative spaces around the dove, and I'll go back into it and probably put in a little bit of detail, but not a lot of detail, because I kind of like the looseness and the abstractness that it has right now. So I'm going to work on this area right here, the ground, put in some of the local color here, but a lot of what's going on in the sky, some of that happened earlier in the early stages. So what I'll do is I'll show you some stills of the early stages so you can see how loosely that was done. And then you can see as I start to develop the sky, I'll start to develop it a little bit more and put a little bit more into it. So here you can see the loosely painted underpainting. So you can see with the bird, it's just kind of left white canvas, and then the earth tones are done and they're just rubbed out. And so that helped to establish all that I did beforehand. Here I'm working into the painting again. I started to work around the cross a little bit, but I found that I liked it better when I had a little bit of the atmosphere. And now here I'm bringing in some of the rays of the sky. What I found is that I started putting the rays of the sky down, and I didn't quite like how strong they looked. So I brought in some light in between those rays, but still bringing in the rays of the sky. And if you notice, just above the dove, there's another portion of the sky that breaks out with light coming out. And here I go into it and I warm up the rays of the sun coming down through the sky. So I wanted that kind of warmth with the bird coming down through the sky and bringing that atmosphere to the sky. So to make the image a little bit stronger. So here's the completed work of the painting, The Fruit of the Spirit, that I produced. I really had a good time painting this particular painting because I really felt a strong connection with God as I was painting this painting. I felt the Spirit of God just moving with my brush. So I really enjoyed painting this particular painting.